Instruction, golf news, equipment, travel, interviews, course profiles, and more. Your weekly fix of all things golf is about to begin. It's the Flagstick Podcast with your hosts, Jeff Potter and Scott McLeod. Well, yes, indeed. Welcome into the Flagstick Podcast. As always, Jeff Potter here with you and Scott McLeod. Another great podcast set for you. The Flagstick Podcast, sponsored this week by Golf PEI. Golf Prince Edward Island is premier Canadian golf destination, boasting the most number of golf courses per capita in the country. Yes, indeed, that is 400 fairways or more, closer than you can possibly imagine. Top-tier accommodations and exquisite culinary experiences. It is absolutely the easiest golf vacation you will ever book. So book your golf vacation and tee times at golfpei.ca. Scotty Mac.
How are you, bud?
I'm great.
Another Saturday
recording. I don't mind the
Darn
Saturdays. The Saturdays are generally kind of open days anyway, and sometimes when you get those really busy weeks, get those busy weeks, and Saturday becomes a little bit easier when you've got exams and snow days and appointments and so on. Sometimes it's hard to find an hour in there to do it, but you know what? It's irrelevant, because what we do is find the hour to be able to sit down and have a chat and record a podcast. So that's what we're doing.
And before we get into it, just want to thank everyone just for the feedback last week, talking about golf goals. Got lots of great feedback on that. People really appreciated that. People are still going to the website. And if you haven't gone back and looked at that podcast, go back and do it. That's episode 30. And have a look on flagstick.com. We have a goal setting sheet that's up there that a number of people have, mentioned, hey, I'm already filling it out. I'm making use of it. This is really helpful. And hey, if we can help people out on this podcast, that's good.
That's it. Well, we've been trying to help people out with golf for 26 plus years. So
Scary,
this is just another platform to do it. And this is probably one of the ones that I've gotten a little bit more email and a little bit more messaging feedback on. Just people that have found the topic interesting, didn't really give it a whole lot of thought. And then when you put together an actual form and checklist for them to use, sometimes when you do some of the work for people, it makes it a lot easier for them to finish the work themselves. I mean, I guarantee if I hung the drywall and someone was there to tape it and mud it, I'd be doing drywall a lot more often. But knowing that the mudding and the taping has to come after hanging it, I'm not so inspired to hang the drywall in the first place. So
Fair enough.
What weird analogy for a golf show, but it is what it is, right? Another great show this week. It is PGA show week, a place where we normally do go, but we're not and haven't for the last few years. But it's still happening in person.
All done up now. Yep.
As big as ever, and stuff's happening. So we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit and take a look at some of the releases and some of the products, and we do have some people that have boots on the ground there that we know are attending the show. So we definitely are getting the earful and the feedback, so we know what's going on. We're going to do that in the front nine. The back nine, we're going to do something a little bit different, kind of inspired by the recent sponsorship of the show with Golf PEI, an article that was posted to flagstick.com about Golf PEI. So people are starting to think about, road trips and golf trips and things like that again. So we thought we'd sort of dive into road trips a little bit and golf trips, and what's involved in them. What do you look for in them? How much do you allocate? Do you go a long distance? Do you not? Do you go a short distance?
It's definitely something we get asked about a lot over the years, and we used to do a big major road trip article, and but it's definitely something one that people want to do, and second that they ask a lot of questions about it and wonder what do they do and go about doing it. So that's I'm looking forward to having that chat today.
So that'll be in the back nine. But let's get started talking about the PGA show here on the front nine, presented by Metcalfe Golf Club, a natural setting, a pleasant challenge. Golf season may be closer than you think. If you don't want to wait to save on golf this season, buy a membership, join a league, or purchase some golf game packs and be ready to hit the first tee. Visit metcalfegolf.com to shop now. All right, Scott, let's dive into the PGA show.
Yeah, just wrapped up.
Just started. It's just wrapped up. We're talking millions of square feet of show space. Now, Not as big as it was when you first started going and when I first
No.
started going, where it was, it was crazy. It was over multiple buildings. It was,
Yeah.
it got smaller over the years for a number of different reasons, but it did get smaller. But COVID kind of kicked it in the butt a little bit, and it
Hmm.
went to virtual. Like a lot of golf, consumer golf shows and trade shows went to more of a virtual setting. But it's now back to being,
A full show.
a
Yeah.
full
Last
show
last
again.
year was last year was sort of a hybrid,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Some
kind of
people
get a
came in
feel for it
person.
again.
Yeah.
But now back to a full show, and unfortunately, we're not there this year. Maybe
Nope.
in the next couple of years, we'll
Yeah.
make a trip back down. But
Grant
we're not.
Grant Fraser was down there taking photos for us this week, which was great.
Yes.
So yeah.
So let's talk about the PGA show now that it's back.
Hmm.
Let's talk about what's different down there this year. Like,
Well, I'll give you some numbers to kind of start out with, and I tweeted some out this week or whatever. So last year, as I said, it was a hybrid show. There was a lot of online content, and they had about 15,000 attendees. So to give people a context, pre-COVID, it had gotten up to a point where you'd see, just over 40,000 people would be signed up for the show. This year, they were expecting about 30,000. So we're not full speed yet, but we're getting there. Exhibitors this year, they were up to 808, I believe it was. 260, yeah, 808. 267 of those were making their first appearance at the PGA show,
okay.
and just over 300 of those actually were in the apparel accessories segment, as
Course.
normal. You
Yeah,
see a
no,
lot of
no
that.
question.
Yeah, it was funny. It
Apparel is
was
it.
funny when I tweeted about the show. Brad Fritz this week. So much apparel is what he tweeted back. It was his first show to go to, and obviously Brad's involved with Red Rooster
Yeah.
gloves or whatever. So they were having a go at the show, and he had some questions definitely going into the show about how to cover it and go about being there and whatever. So, you know what? It's become a relationship show for sure. Some big manufacturers weren't there. TaylorMade was not there, for an example. Some others. Most of the big ones were there, but it's a little bit more of a muted form than maybe they've had in the past. But certainly there's business being done. We will say, as we've talked about on the podcast here, a lot of the product introductions came out prior to the show.
Yes, exactly.
There certainly were some coming during the week. A lot of that is aligned with the PGA Tour and the tour coming out, so they've got to get players using that. But there's a lot of other smaller manufacturers and travel destinations and so forth that were there, introducing new products, new services, and things like that. So was I sad I wasn't there? I won't say no, but I mean, there's only parts that you really like. I love seeing the people. I love interacting with people. But again, there wasn't a lot of new product introductions, so I don't know how much extra content really could have developed down there. So,
Well,
but it's definitely changed.
this is always the thing. I mean, the fascinating part of the PGA show for me, aside from when I first started going, the just overwhelming
Mm.
loudness of the
Boots and
equipment
everything.
section for the most part,
Yeah.
with those massive 2 and 3 tiered booths and big
Yeah.
screen TVs and celebrity appearances and autograph
Mhm.
signings and stuff. It was just a spectacle.
It was
It was like
excessive
it's the Super
almost.
Bowl of
Yeah.
the golf industry. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no question about that. But it was just it was so much going on. And I remember,
Mhm.
there was a section we used to walk through, and it was kind of like probably the more interesting of the portions of the show was what we used to call the 10 by 10s.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was the guys that all they could afford was the smallest booth possible, the 10 by
Right.
10 booth. It was
Yep.
always either out in the
We'll
hallway or
call it
down at
the
the far
dreamer
end of the
section.
exactly. And
Yeah.
you would walk down and there'd be, oh, look at my innovative golf tee. And then
Mhm.
2 booths down, there'd be another one saying, hey, check
Yeah.
out my innovative golf tee. And then
Yeah.
another 3 booths down and an aisle over would be, hey, check out my innovative golf tee.
Right.
And they were all the same. They were
Yeah.
all the same
Yeah.
innovative. They were
Yeah.
made of a certain material. And it's like, but there's a little less of that
Yeah.
than there used to be. But that to me was really kind of the bread and
What?
butter of what I liked, was seeing
Yeah.
those unique items that that's all they had. They had an
What
item.
I think at that time, you had an industry that was sort of exploding, right? So
Mhm.
a lot of people want to get into it. It was a time and an era in the 90s and so forth, where the game was booming to a certain point, so everybody wanted their piece of it, right? And everybody had an idea that maybe hadn't come to market, Internet, wasn't around as much, so obviously people couldn't see what
No.
other people were doing, right? So it lended to creativity and people working on their own in their places on whatever they're working on. So yeah, you did see a lot of people that were taking wild risks, because like you said, there could be a guy that he'd risked every dollar, including his house, on making these teas. And there's all these different businesses,
Hmm.
and that was cool to see the creativity of it, but it also wasn't the reality of it from a business standpoint.
Mm.
And I think what you're starting to see now is, especially given things like interest rates and economy and different things, even the manufacturers are treating it slightly differently. It's not the massive spectacles that you would see before. It's a little bit more fiscal responsibility, and we're in seeing, okay, what's our actual ROI on this show? What
Hmm.
can we actually spend? And I can say, I literally talked to a couple people within certain manufacturers that said to me, in the past week, I can't even believe we're actually there,
Yeah.
just because they looked at what the cost was for the return. And weighing it has to be very difficult for some of these people. But that said, you're right, there's still the smaller companies that are there going, if we're going to get our name out there,
That's their only shot.
that's their shot. And it's
Yeah.
also their shot as well to connect with people in the industry, because maybe they're not an industry person,
No.
and they need to connect, because a lot of the things that happen in the golf industry these days, as opposed to before when it was a very you know very individual, there's a lot of collaborations now.
Hmm.
So if there's an opportunity for a small Bluetooth T speaker company to do a collaboration and a partnership with a $1 billion manufacturer of golf equipment, yeah, that's a big business opportunity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um
It's huge.
yeah, so it definitely has changed. So there's still there's still a purpose to the show for sure, but the whole ambiance has changed. There's a large education component that's going on there, from all sides of it. Yeah, it's just a change show more than anything. And there were lots of media there. I think there is. I'm trying to think of how many. Grant Fraser told me how many registered media that they had. 700 media reps from 26 countries. So still lots
That's
of
pretty
coverage.
good.
Now we have to understand that media has changed a lot too. A lot of those media representatives in a lot of cases are, YouTube channels, podcasters, bloggers, or whatever. And again, there's not negativity to that. That's fine. But the show is covered differently,
No, yeah,
right?
big time. Yeah,
Like I
well,
know I noticed, I remember how it used to be like if we took a camera on the floor, this is only a few years back, it's courtesy to get permission of whether you can show stuff or not. Because you got to remember, a
hmm.
lot of times the product that was there hadn't been shown yet, hadn't been released, and maybe they were showing it to you early. But what I noticed now in following some people that were covering the show, they were doing it maybe, a YouTube or a live video or whatever. They're just marching in there. They don't even ask, and they just start taking video and stuff all over the place or
Hmm.
whatever. So manufacturers have to treat that differently of, okay, this is great, we're getting the publicity and stuff out of it, but we got to make sure that we don't have price lists out here, and we don't, what I mean. So
Hmm.
that sort of changed the show a little bit that way.
Well, I remember, back in the day when we first started covering the show, I mean, you were going from booth to booth, especially with the bigger companies asking for media kits.
Yeah,
And it's like, and if somebody handed you a media kit with CDs in it, well, boy, oh boy, you were just elated. It was like jumping for joy. Crack open the
yeah,
bottle of champagne. This is amazing. You mean I don't
yeah.
have to scan slides, to be able to
Wow, you're
produce the
dating yourself now,
magazine?
bud.
What's that?
You're dating
Well,
yourself
I,
now,
I
that's
think I
for sure.
dated myself a long time ago. I don't think that me talking about slides is. I think I still have the scanner in the garage with the little slide thing on top of it. I don't think that
Nightmare.
it's worth much now unless someone were
No,
to buy it as a collector's item or
a
something.
novelty.
The old HP 5P
Yeah,
scanner, flatbed scanner with the
yeah,
the slide light on the top there.
yeah.
But yeah,
I,
it's changed a lot, and I agree with you. The smaller companies, you look at those shows almost like, maybe there's not an opportunity for them to become millionaires selling their golf tee or their glove or their hat or whatever their unique, but maybe
right.
there's licensing opportunities that they might
Yeah,
not have gotten
sure.
if they weren't put in a room
Yeah,
with 1,000 golf
Other
people.
vendors. Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
the retailers, sorry, the manufacturers are there, but then every
Yeah.
single person going to the show is a vendor, is a retailer, is
Right. Yep.
potentially, somebody who's not attending the show, like we know Don Hazel and Golf Trends.
Hmm.
It's a Canadian distribution company. Well, they're always looking for stuff to add to their product. They're the company that they have 1,000 different products that they sell in the small little things, the ball markers, the golf tees, the
Hmm.
visors, all the little
Yep.
things. They're looking for those 10 by 10s
Yeah.
because they want that unique item to put into their catalog to
Yeah.
sell, to add, because it's one more of the 1,000 products.
Yeah, for sure. And you see a lot of add-on stuff as well. You see segments of the industry have been growing. Say, for an example, launch monitors and indoor simulators.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's obviously grew greatly during COVID. A lot of people and clubs are obviously looking at that technology to, increase the length of their season and so forth. So, you're starting to see some companies go, oh, what can we do to dig into that product segment? Is there some other type of element that we can add in? So it's not the traditional stuff anymore. It's thinking differently. It's also
Mm-hmm.
thinking about services related to those. Okay, we can do a traditional booking engine for a golf course,
Mm-hmm.
but what about a booking engine for instructors or indoor simulator facilities? I mean, these are the things where the game is kind of pushing forward. So
Yeah.
those would be the things that you would be kind of looking at, as opposed to just straight out products.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say
Yeah.
it's the innovations as far as the services and the things to maybe make your business better. That when I talk to people, that's what they're looking for when they go to the show. What is going to make my business, whatever aspect of their golf business is, what's going to make it easier and a better business for their consumer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a thing, and the memories that I have of the show. I haven't been in a long time, obviously, but probably the one that stands out in my mind the most, of all the shows that I attended, was probably the year that Nike was actually making the biggest splash in the golf industry. They were
Okay.
not just doing clothing and shoes. And I remember
Right.
the buses that were wrapped up to
Oh
look
yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sleeves of
Yeah.
golf
Golf
balls, and
balls. Yeah.
like it was insane. I mean,
Yeah.
even the year that Callaway introduced the Rule 35 golf ball, and
Hmm.
we're in that big room,
Yeah.
conference room, and
Theater with like a
rows, and they were,
thousand people. Yeah.
yeah, they were walking down. They had the little bags, and in the bags were the little sleeves, and there wasn't a 3-ball sleeve. It was
It
the
was
4-ball sleeve or
yeah,
six ball. It
six
was
balls.
six
Yeah, it
ball
was a six
sleeve.
ball sleeve.
The
Yeah.
Rule 35,
Yeah.
like things like that, where it was just so over the
Yeah.
top, and just
Yeah.
the marketing, and it was wild. There
Well,
were
I
there were
still talk
tethered
about,
balloons flying
yeah,
all over the place, blimps.
Goldwyn had a blimp. Yeah,
Yeah,
Goldwyn, if people never saw that manufacturer, but
Goldwyn.
yeah, Goldwyn of all things. So,
Wow.
this is kind of that period where it was kind of mid 90s to early 2000s. And like I said, this was, IPOs, and there was money being thrown at the industry that, it wasn't known if it was going to stick or not, but
Hmm.
they were spending it,
Yeah.
and they had carte blanche to go and do that. Obviously, a lot of that things changed in 2008. Obviously, there's a bit of an economic downturn, a crash there in the U.S. that sort of changed things a little bit. So I would say things are healthy. Things are people are happy, and they're going forward, but they're going to do things smartly. So
Hmm.
you're going to see, again, product introductions. It's hard to gain market share. It really is.
Yeah.
So you just don't see the splashy extravagance, that you once would, and nor should. I mean, it makes an impact a little bit as far as from a marketing standpoint, but they have to decide whether it sells clubs for them or not. So there's not as many tour players hanging out at that show. There's not as many celebrities and stuff. So it's a different experience. It's more about straight, let's do some business, and let's figure some things out.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I mean, I now that we keep talking about it, I kind of miss the idea of not being there.
Well,
And
you know
it's
what?
not it's not that the
Yeah.
weather here sucks so bad that I
No, no,
can't
no.
stand it. So I mean, hey,
No.
I'm a true Canadian. I don't
Yeah.
mind the winter and the snow and everything. That's
Yeah.
all fine and dandy, though. It hasn't
And
been a
the
good
PG
ODR season though.
Yeah, the PGA of Canada puts on a Canada Night, which has been a tradition for many
Yeah.
years, and they recognize their national award winners. They have their Hall of Fame inductees. Congratulations to the trio there. But that's an opportunity to get in a room with a whole bunch of people maybe you haven't seen. There's a lot of people that have moved and shifted to other coasts. Maybe they've shifted jobs. There's always a smattering of tour players and stuff that come in there. It's a nice way to connect, even if it's just for a few hours. But it's those things that kind of make the PGA Show Week special. It's
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity for everybody to kind of get together because there's not a lot of those.
Yep.
Because not everybody comes to the Canadian Open or the CP Women's Open or whatever. This is a chance in the wintertime, the off season, for head pros, golf industry people, wherever, all to be in one spot. So that's the part I probably miss.
Yeah,
And
it's the night out. The night's out too. Like the little after you're done your 15 hours of wandering the show and socializing and stuff. It's nice that you go back, you change the clothes, and you head out for a bite to eat, and maybe hit a bar and have a few drinks with a bunch of people. It's just a real big social thing that's mixed in with work, and it's.
And it's both exhausting and inspiring. People have to realize that, you're walking tons and tons of steps. You come back, and I've said this to a few people, you're basically wiped out for a week afterwards.
Oh, for sure.
Because you're exhausted. But on the other side of it, if you saw a few nuggets of things during that show, and I've seen it this week, especially following people on social media, you can tell they're fired up. Like they're just, they're fired up for the year ahead. And, sometimes you just need that little bit of motivation to kind of keep you boosting along in the industry and, to keep you kind of moving. So it's good in that way. But, it sounds like it was a good show. It sounds like, the pace with 30,000 attendees, it's getting back to, kind of, I'll say, normalcy. But we still don't know where it's going to go as far as the show is concerned. What does it look like going into the future? That's hard to say. Again, we'll see regarding the industry itself. Round levels, participation levels, sales. We look at the products. There's definitely a rise in costs of everything in the world right now. So products are not getting cheaper. So what does that do to the product cycles, and what does that do to the introductions as far as products? Companies are going to keep introducing stuff, but obviously if they're not checking out, that could change what happens as far as the industry is concerned. So we'll see where it goes. It's different
maybe we'll get back there.
Yeah,
maybe we'll get back there. So, I think we will. I think we will get back there at some point or another. I think that's inevitable. I know I'd like to, but it might be another year away.
I'm looking forward to my 28th.
28th. I don't even know how many it's been. It hasn't been that many for me. I might be in the 15 range.
I started early.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Okay, listen. Before we dive out for a break, I do want to touch on something, because this is kind of a funny Twitter poll that you did.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You put out there which of these items you would most like to see on a menu at golf courses halfway houses. I gotta say, I mean, man, this could be a half a segment of a show on its own, just chatting about this. But I didn't want to let this show go by, because I know we got a really good topic in the back nine that we want to talk about today. So it's probably gonna eat it up. Go figure, right?
Wow.
Man, that was awesome. So you had egg rolls, pizza slices, tacos, and pierogies.
You got it.
And I mean, I'm not surprised at this, but I am a little bit, only that pizza slices was 41.5%.
Yeah.
I'm a little shocked in the sense that of all the things that you would eat at a halfway house, I'm telling you right now, pizza slices is not one of the ones that would be on any one of my lists. I'm in the middle of a round of golf, and I'm going to dive into a slice of wheel at the halfway house. Are you kidding me?
Why not?
That's one of the messiest things you could possibly.
Why not?
The grease on your hands. I mean, you're holding a golf club. What do you eat? A greasy pizza?
Fold it up and let it go.
My God!
There's actually golf courses now, especially if you look at wood stoves and how stuff are working. There's a couple of golf courses now that actually have a cart that goes around. on the golf course that has a pizza oven on it, because if you get at the high temperatures, you only need 90 seconds to kind of
Oh
make
my
one.
God.
So it's becoming more common. This really came from a lot of discussions of people trying to go, how do we up the level of service at our golf course?
Yeah.
And the funniest response I had from someone though is they said, "How about a sandwich that's not 3 days old?" Which is
No,
true.
let's just quantify this by saying that's not a general statement about
No,
sandwiches, the
no, no, no,
halfway
no.
shacks at
That was
golf
one.
courses,
That was one. That was one person's statement or
but
whatever.
that
But
crap does happen.
yeah, but the thing is like, part of the service level of things that people can do, if we look at golf courses, I mean, one of the challenges for golf courses is how do they compete? And you compete, and if you look at the golf courses that are doing really well, they compete by doing things that make their golf course aspirational, that you want to go and play. Like I'm going to go play Blue Jack National in March. I'm excited to play there in March. Part of the reason I'm excited about is the way they have their halfway house services and all the things that they do, that makes it more, you think less about the green fee and you think about the experience more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I look at golf courses that I've been to, I mean, when I was out in Whistler in September, they had some amazing Italian sandwiches at Whistler Golf Club. They were awesome between nines. They were doing like panini presses and stuff and whatever, and they were great sandwiches. It wasn't just a crap sandwich, right? But it was elevating that service, that you didn't care that it cost a little bit more, but overall, when you look back at it, it was something that enhanced your day. So the idea here was, all right, let's put out 4 items, that I did that are different, and what would people choose among those? And frankly, I was surprised that, obviously pizza was number one, but tacos and egg rolls. And you got to remember,
I like the egg roll idea. I'm sorry.
I love the egg
that
roll.
one.
I'm a
awesome.
huge advocate. I'm a huge
love the egg roll.
advocate.
Way more than a pizza slice.
Right. But people have to understand, an egg roll can be not just your traditional egg roll.
Yeah.
As you know, when we were in Charleston the one time, we had the mac and cheese egg rolls.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want to those bad boys.
Now become a common item, but it's a hand-based item that you can eat that is really quick and really easy. So
think about that mac and cheese egg rolls.
Yeah,
mac and cheese with a little bacon in there. How awesome was? I mean,
right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So again, think about that. Golf course operators, that are listening to this podcast. Egg rolls, mac and cheese egg rolls. Stuff those bad boys with whatever you want and make egg rolls. Those finger foods, they're not too greasy. You get a little plastic container with some dipping in it if you want to, or go dipless. That's okay too. But egg rolls, I want to see that on the menu at halfway houses around this region in 2023.
Yeah. I mean, so again, there's obviously an appetite for some of that stuff. Yes, I made the joke. Now. Right. And based on that survey, obviously not a lot of people are into pierogies at the halfway house, but again, these are giving people different options.
I could do pierogies.
I could too. So
I couldn't do tacos. That's worse than pizza.
No, it could be all
maybe
over
a soft shelled, maybe like a fajita kind of deal there, but taco.
But again, thinking differently of what you're
outside the box.
I mean, another hot dog, really? I mean, they can be great and they're easy and they're convenient, but
I think that's part of it with hot dogs.
How many people are going to be talking about the hot dog afterwards?
What do you think of when you think of halfway houses at golf courses? You think hot dogs and sandwiches. That's what I think. I think pre-made egg salad and chicken salad and roast beef sandwiches or wraps, just something that they can make ahead of time, wrap in saran wrap and stick on a cart. Or in the fridge. Like I get it.
I was at a course last year where they were making corned beef sandwiches at the half, like semi-fresh, as far as they had and I get it. There's costs that are involved with it. And believe
speed.
Me, I understand this. Believe me, this is, I've done, if people are asking and saying, oh, you're a fool or whatever, I've done lots of golf course operations courses, including food and beverage. I've been involved in the operations or whatever. So I understand the limitations that you have and the ROI that, you need to get out of these things. But in order to make yourself stand out and to really push these things, you need to kind of do something a little bit extra. So you know what? As you said, pizza slices came out number one on that. Egg rolls and tacos are around 25% piece. Pierogies came in at 8%, but so think about that differently and put in your request now.
Okay, we got to take a break, but before we go to break, I want to put this out here because I want to expand on this. This topic has really got me going. I want to expand on this in a future show, not too distant future.
Okay.
I want to expand on this. I want our viewers and our listeners to message us, either message Scott directly through social media, or Scott Mack at flagstick.com, or jbotter at flagstick.com, or go to the website and message us through there. I want to know what you want to see. There was 4 items here. So maybe you don't like these 4 items. I want to know what 4 items you want to stick on the halfway house menu at your golf course. I want to know what they are, because we want to talk about them, and I want to dive into this topic a little bit more. I really do.
I like it.
But we got to go. We got to get out, take a break, pay some bills. Stay with us. The back 9 coming up. We're going to talk about road trips and golf trips and some little details about those from our own experience. So stay with us. We'll be right back on the Flagstick Podcast.
When you golf on Prince Edward Island, there are over 400 fairways closer than you can imagine. Not to mention countless miles of pristine beaches and a rich world-class culinary experience. So get here fast, then take it slow and play around on Island Time. Golf Prince Edward Island.
And welcome back to the Flagstick Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Botter, with your other host, Scott McLeod. And great front 9. That was, I think,
I'm hungry.
I know. Well, I'm not hungry for pizza, but I am hungry for egg rolls for some strange reason. Right. I don't know why.
I have a good recipe. I'll give it to you off air.
I think I got some frozen bacon wrapped scallops I can dig out of the fridge.
No, fresh egg rolls. I got a great recipe.
Okay. All right. Share recipe later. In the meantime,
should I put that up on flagstick.com? Should we put the recipe up there?
We should do that. Yeah.
I could probably do that.
There's a lot of bizarre. Yeah. I never thought the last 6 minutes of the front 9 of this podcast would turn into the most entertaining so far. Talking about egg rolls, pizza, and pierogies.
Why not?
Oh my gosh, that's going to be a really. You know what? I do want to dive into that as a topic for one of the
that'd be
bigger topic, because I'm going to do a little bit of research, because I want to do a little bit of research into halfway houses and that kind of thing.
It'd definitely be good to have some discussions with some F&B people as well regarding golf courses, of how they choose what they do, and why they maybe don't do certain things, and maybe where they're going with things as well, because I am seeing golf courses kind of take a few more risks and consider some things. But
I'm also seeing some golf courses take a lot less risks, and that probably concerns me, because we started talking about the whole halfway house, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking of some of the golf courses that I played this past summer, and how many of them no longer have halfway houses, and they're relying only on the beverage cart, which, I'm sorry, but unless you've got a really high-end state-of-the-art beverage cart, what you have on that beverage cart is just chips and pop and chocolate bars and alcohol, sandwiches. There's no hot dogs. There's nothing warm. Like, it's just
and it's a revenue machine. I mean, these are all the things, right? Here's the other thing, before we get
but
to
is it an expense machine? I guess that's the question.
That's the other side of it.
Did you get rid of the halfway house not because you didn't want to provide that level of service, but because the cost of running a halfway house versus the cost of having 1 or 2 beverage carts on the golf course was, the significantly different from a profitability standpoint. And that's probably the reason, or it's a greed thing, one or the other, but
who knows?
I don't know.
Topic for another day.
Yeah, exactly. See, we started to dive into it. That's why I didn't want to go there.
I know. Exactly.
That said,
we'll leave it at that. All right.
Let's get into the back 9. That's the topic that we want to discuss. The back 9 is presented by Golf Sim Gurus. Work on your game all year round in the privacy of your own home. Custom golf simulator setups built to your specs to fit your budget. Visit golfsimgurus.ca to learn more. And throwing the piece of paper away.
Big topic here. We were probably not going to cover it all today.
No, this might be a two-part show thing, but let's try to dive into it a little bit. Inspired for the most part by the fact that we just recently published an article on flagstick.com on golf PEI, and a place that we have probably was I think that's our most recent destination that
Yeah, it
you and
was
I
actually.
have.
Yeah.
I think that's the last road trip, if you will, that we took. So some people are reaching out, asking some very valid questions about,
pointed questions. Yeah.
about these types of trips. And we have, Scott and I's experience in this is we've done a lot of these
Yeah.
types of trips. 26 years of Flagstick, we've done a ton of traditional classic road trips, like flat out jump in the car, going back to our very first one to the Sunrise side of Michigan. And that was our very first one ever. And we've done many since.
The very first you and I did, right?
Yes.
We had lots of other ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we've done many since that one that are classic traditional road trips, but we've also done some where we've jumped on a plane and done the road trip once we got there, kind of thing. So we are a little bit experienced in this area. And we wanted to share some of those road trips have been worse than others. Let me tell you, from
for sure. That's what people have to realize, is that not all of these go well.
No, not all sunshine and rainbows, people.
We certainly endured a lot of things to be able to give the advice by our mistakes of maybe overbooking, of lots of different things, and we'll get to that.
Okay, so let's dive into this a little bit. Where do you go? Where do you go on a road trip? How do you decide where you're going to go? Is it everybody goes to Myrtle Beach? Is it let's find some obscure place that nobody's ever been? Or like how do we how do we go about choosing them?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think first off, a lot of people are attracted to go to some place because obviously they've heard it from a marketing standpoint. Maybe others have gone to a certain place, had a certain experience. It could be a case of there's a certain golf course that I want to go to, and maybe they build a trip around there. Other sides of it could be economic. They could go and pick out a place because it's, they look at a place and go, oh, I'd love to go there, but that cost is too much. What's within our budget. You have to consider even things like time, like how often how long are you going to go for? Are we going to spend a bunch of time traveling to get there and a bunch traveling back? And a lot of people maybe they'll take a traditional week for a vacation, and if you spend 2 days on each end doing travel to get there, you've only got 3 days in the middle, and you maybe get 3.5 or squeeze that out of there. So those become parts of it as well in deciding kind of where to go. Ease of booking, that's something that not to sit there and push an advertiser for an example, but one of the bits of success for Golf PEI is, and a number of other destinations, is they've made it fairly convenient that if you actually can call a particular number and you can sit there and plan out what you want to do, and they'll guide you and they'll give you a quote relative to that. Because you got to remember, there's a couple different things here with these road trips. There's self-planning. There's also, getting the help of a destination. There's also getting the help of an actual tour operator as well, which will maybe be for destinations that are more far flung where you can't do your research. These days, you can obviously do more research. So where you go, budget, biggest thing. It's usually a big factor.
Huge.
A huge factor more than anything. How far away is it? How hard is it to get there? And you also got to understand that, where you go is also dependent on who you're going with, right? And we'll get to that as far as number of people to have and stuff like that. You can't pick out a destination that 2 people out of 16 want to go to. It has to be a place where everybody goes, hey, we're going to do a road trip. And we're going to go to TBC Osprey Valley. And, you've got 16 people that have actually heard of the place and have said, ooh, I've heard about that place before. We'd be interested in going to that. So keeping everybody happy, it can't be down to, one guy really loves that place and away you go. What do you look for as far as where to go? And we've obviously, besides wherever Scott figures out where we're going to be going.
Exactly. Well, the big thing with the road trips, the big thing with the road trips or the golf trips for me is I look at it as, first and foremost, I'm going on this trip to golf.
Right.
Like that's my primary reason for going. So the first thing that I'm looking at is the golf courses, the golf that I want to play. That's how I sort of started off. It's like,
that's your foundation.
Exactly. So if I want to do a road trip, let's say I'm going to do a road trip to Wisconsin.
Sure.
Seems like a rather obscure place to do a road trip to, but
not really.
There is, well, I mean, relative to, when I say obscure, let me just qualify that. Places like Myrtle Beach, Florida, these stereotypical destinations, great destinations. I would still take road trips to Myrtle Beach, but that's a different kind of road trip. That is like a golf crazy party, like that's that side of it. But then there's other sides to Myrtle Beach that aren't golf crazy party. They're a little bit more upscale golf resorts, that kind of thing. So every trip is different, but I want to look at where I want to play. So if I'm going to Wisconsin, what's the golf course in Wisconsin that I probably want to hit?
You're like going to Kohler or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. So I start with that maybe, and then I build around it. What's around there? What can I do outside of golf? Because I don't want to just play golf on that particular trip.
Right.
That's not the golf till I drop type of destination for me. I want, what else can I do? So I start to look at that and build around, okay, are there casinos there? Is there shopping there? Although I'm not a big shopper. Is there entertainment? Are there, places
dining? Where are you eating?
Like what else can I do? I've done my round of golf. Now I want to do something. And and
I guess that comes down to the expectations, right? And you got to be really clear with the group that you have. And this is where it becomes difficult as far as the size of the group, right? That exponentially, as you get a larger group, you're going to have more disagreements as far as who's interested in what and what their expectations are. As you said, is it golf? Is it entertainment? Is it socializing? Is it non-golf items? Is it casino? I mean, it's not that you're likely going to have a group that goes, hey, we want to play golf and go antiquing, but you might. But the thing is, that's the thing, is to be really clear about that, especially with a group. It's different for yourself. You know what you want, but it should be really clear you're communicating with the group. So you don't have false expectations when all of a sudden, half the group says, hey, we're going to go play, a second round. And then after that, we're going to play the par 3 course. And then a whole bunch of people are like, whoa, I can't do that. I'm not into that as much. So I agree. As far as that expectation is, golf is definitely the core, then build everything around there. We should talk about that though, as far as how many people is too many? What's the right amount? I mean, I've seen every scale of it, and I've seen disasters, and we've had small groups and had disasters. I won't say with who.
Here's the thing. When we do these trips, here's the one thing about the trips. When we do them for ourselves, I always like the idea that it was just the two of us.
Right.
Okay. Like, and then we're not talking about group stuff. And the reason for that, and I'll explain the reason for that. The reason for that is there's flexibility in that.
Right.
When we did it. Number one, sometimes we were burning 2 courses a day.
Sure.
So we didn't want to play with anybody. We wanted to be in a cart, and we wanted to move as quickly as possible. And a lot of times we were pushing through groups and stuff, but that was the reason we were doing them from a media perspective. We want to see the golf course and move on to the next one quick, because we still had to get somewhere for a dinner or, check into a hotel. Now, when you're doing them with a group, there is something to be said for having an uneven number of people in the group that would allow for some variety in your, you know what I mean? So you have some locals maybe jumping into your group. So it's not just your group. So you don't have like 16 people where you've got 4 foursomes, or 24 people where you've got, set number of foursomes. Okay, I got 6 foursomes. Okay. What if you only had groups that were in threesomes, so that there was always room for one single from, there's that. I think
there's good and there's bad with that though. I mean,
you could get an absolute nut job.
Yeah, that's the other side of it, right? I mean, one of the things with road trips is that you try to control as many variables as possible.
Yes.
Right. And I would suggest that for people, and that's why I think the problem when you get exponentially larger groups, you tend to have more difficulties. So
Mhm.
if you have 24,
24 is a good number for me. Like I like
but
24.
that's a big number though. That's a lot of people to manage, right?
Depends on
Because
where you're going though, right? I
well,
mean,
yeah, but it's also a case of you've got 24 different personalities that are on that trip, and you have to understand that they don't always fit and work with each other. So people have to realize that as your group gets larger, you're going to have a greater chance that you're going to have conflicts within the group.
now would you change the way you think about that if you're looking at your group of 24 is your group, your social circle?
Sure, yeah,
Like for
because
me, I don't have 24 people that I could call up on the phone tomorrow, put together a group and go,
right,
that I know all 24 or all 23 other people well
right,
enough to
yeah,
feel that I could spend a week with them.
right,
I probably have a
yeah.
circle of, I'm going to say maybe 8.
Yeah, but
You know that
but again, that's where that familiarity becomes important of planning a road trip. This is the difference sometimes of planning a road trip and then taking random people along
mhm.
versus taking people that you know well. So yes, I
I'm
would
afraid
say
of random. So
I
to
would,
me, I'm not
yeah.
I'm not necessarily one of those people that would say, "Hey, you know what? There's a group of 40 people that are jumping on a bus and going up to Tremblant
Mm,
for the weekend."
right.
I'm not really down with that.
Yeah.
That's
And a
not
weekend
me.
you might get away with, but you got to remember
Yeah.
too, it's like having kids. Like
Yeah.
a couple, your friends' kids and your kids might get along, and they might get along for like to hang out for like 4 hours. But all of a sudden you put them in a space together where they have to, be for 3 days. Somebody's fighting over something, right?
Yeah.
So
So
this is
if
no
I'm going
different
to
with
do that,
adults.
it's going to be with 3 of my buddies so that
Right.
I have my 4, and my
Yeah.
request to be to be paired with my 3 buddies for all the golf so that I'm always
Mm.
playing with my same
Yeah.
foursome is going to
Yeah.
be out there. If it's not a possibility, I'm really scared and skeptical because it's not like a golf tournament where you
No.
sign up for a golf tournament and that you take what you get.
Mm-mm.
You're spending a lot of money on these trips.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Spending
you're not
24 hours a day with
organizing,
these people.
yeah, if you're not
Yeah.
organizing the trip yourself,
Yeah.
if you're jumping into a road trip,
Mm-hmm.
then I want to make sure that I've got some people in that group that I'm comfortable with. Now, if
Yeah.
I'm organizing the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
and my social circle is big enough that I'm going to have, 23 of my closest friends that I
Yeah. You're
play
probably going to
golf
be
with all
okay.
the
Yeah.
time, then great. Go with the
Yeah.
bigger group because
Yeah.
ultimately the bigger group's going to bring your costs down for the most
Sure.
part.
Yeah.
And if you're already comfortable and familiar with the other
Mm-hmm.
23 people you're going with, then that bigger group's not going to be as
Yeah.
much of a hassle. But
I mean, the whole point is to have a good experience. And
yeah,
if you go and it's ruined because you don't have people that are familiar or things like that, and that leads into other things as well. I mean, um, you know, when you go on the trips, formats. I mean, we've
mhm,
been through this before,
yeah,
where you go on a group and, we go together, two
mhm,
people, really easy. You just have a match and whatever.
yeah.
Sometimes you don't have a match.
And we've had some
And
epic ones.
right, but people have to think about that when you're going on these trips because again, it's about reducing the amount of friction. If people are there to have a good time, are people there to go to be competitive, whatever the case, a lot of people will start to think about a road trip and go, "Hey, let's have a road trip and we'll have a big competition and we'll all play against each other and whatever." Well, guess what? There's egos gets bruised, cheating happens, all sorts of stuff will
Hmm.
happen, right? Somebody gets mad, and next thing the spreadsheet that you created with your points, goes out the window. Does this sound familiar? What I mean?
I honestly cannot believe you just brought that up. I really can't.
but things like this can happen, right?
What?
So people have to realize that, you're probably safer to have things a little bit more low key, have things from a competition standpoint that are maybe a little softer, and they're not as so hardcore, just so you don't get in. Because as soon as you get a battle happening, it's going to ruin the trip, not just for those couple people, but for everyone, right? So
There were some
again,
mad people on. We were mad. I was mad.
but I think people need to be a little bit more
Yes.
thoughtful about that. And that's part of the planning the trip. As I said in my notes, choose formats so people don't kill each other. It's, you know what I mean? Or it's
Well,
just
especially
not
if
going
you
to be
have to
fun.
hang out in the same hotel for a
Exactly.
week. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that could be that's a very long time to have to live with some
Yeah.
anger.
And the thing is, as you go into those things, we said about familiarity and expectations. Expectations are really huge because it's all of a sudden you go on a trip and something changes. If somebody says I'm there for golf, go out and have a couple drinks afterward and go whatever. Well, next thing you know, you got three dudes that want to go out and party every night and no show on tee times and go to strip clubs or whatever. I mean, next thing you know, it kind of throws everyone off, right? So you got to lay down those ground rules a little bit beforehand of what those expectations are if you're going to have a successful event.
And that's what happens when you run into organizing trips. I mean, because you and I have talked about this in the past. We've done a lot of road trips, and we've been talking, we still are talking, and there's a really good chance that we're going to do this at some point. Yeah. But I can guarantee you when we do this, we're not going to organize a trip for the purpose of trying to make a whole whack of profit as a trip organizer, because then you get hung up in money making and you're losing sight of the group dynamic that you're trying to assemble. Yeah. I want to go on a trip,
aspect, right?
Yeah, I want to go on a trip and organize a trip for 24 of Flagstick's greatest listeners, viewers, audience, whatever the case may be. Yeah. But I don't want to have anybody on that trip that's only interested in going on a trip to get drunk and pass out in an alley somewhere and wake up hungover and dragging themselves to the tee, because I don't want that. I don't want no shows because they were too busy partying. I don't have a problem with people wanting to have a good time.
Sure.
And those kinds of things can be built into your trip too.
Yeah.
So you can build in that day where your tea time is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 8 o'clock in the morning. So you can go and tie one on the night before if you want, sleep it off, get up and still be fresh enough to go and make your tea time. You can, but that's part of the organizational process of building that pub night, if you want, into your trip.
Yeah.
So you don't build it in and say, okay, well, we're going to have a pub night. We're going to go here. We're going to do this. And then we're going to 7 o'clock tea time. That's an organizing disaster.
Yeah.
So
here's another point here as far as organizing that we should maybe address or whatever, and that I see a mistake that gets made on a lot of road trips, especially when people go to destinations that maybe they're once in a lifetime. Maybe they're going to Scotland or whatever the case may be, or along, destination Northern Ireland or whatever. The stay and play versus on the move. Now, I'll put this out there. We've done tons of road trips where we've gone to one area, played lots in that area. We've also done road trips where we went to 6 states in 11 days, right? Where we were on the move all the time.
Yes.
What's your thoughts and advice based on doing that as far as the trips?
That's an interesting one, because I enjoyed some of the ones we did where we just kept going. They were a lot of fun, but I was younger. You were younger.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the length of our road trips. I mean, I remember when we started doing them, we were doing, I think for the most part, there were 14 or 15 days.
Yeah, some of these big ones.
And we drove.
Again, people have to understand that we are obviously doing it from an editorial standpoint.
Yes, yeah.
So we're trying to provide experiences for our readers so that we could give feedback to
them.
But
we weren't flying to the destinations back then either. We were driving. So there was always 2 days on the front and 2 days on the back that we built in for travel time. Right. So you're talking 4 out of your 14 days, your 15 days. So now you're down to a 10 or 11 day trip, which is a reasonable trip. Now the trip started to get shorter as we got a little bit older, because we weren't pulling the 2-a-days. 2-a-days are hard, but I enjoyed early on. I enjoyed when we were doing, did around and then jumped in the van and drove to the next place, played around, then checked in somewhere, got up the next day, packed it all up and headed to another golf course. But I would say finding a hub and a home base, if you will, and saying, okay, this is where we are for the next 7 days.
Right.
And
maybe you do 2 hubs.
Yeah.
You can do 2 hubs.
But the hub is good because it allows you get checked into your hotel room or your resort or whatever. I mean, Pinehurst was awesome like that.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're there. Your clothes are there. You're unpacked a little bit. You're not living out of a suitcase. There's shuttles that go from where you are to the golf courses that you're playing, or you have, you know, your own rental cars or whatever, and you're golfing, you're coming back.
Yeah.
You're golfing, you're coming back. You're golfing, you're coming
Yeah.
back. And
But
then
not
maybe
only you're
halfway
coming
through you
back,
move on.
but not only are you coming back, you have time then to enjoy, you know, walking around or going out for dinner or whatever. You got to remember, if you're doing the constant move, right? Especially if, you know, somebody in your group has to drive. And if you're not on an escorted trip or whatever, you miss out the experience of seeing the place around you. So for some people that matters, some people that doesn't. But it also means that, you know, you get a lot of people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a golf trip, but you get a lot of people that I hear that go on like a bus tour into Ireland, for an example, and they're like, yeah, we didn't really see much because we were on the bus most of the time. We saw a lot out the window, because they're always on the move. Whereas, you know, the thing is, if you can go to a place like St. Andrews, you know, where we're, you know, I've been embedded there for a week at one point. You know, it's great. If you park the car, you get to see the culture of the place. You get to go to the pubs. You get to go out to, you know, to hang out. You go for walks around town. Those are the other options that really can enhance a trip. So people should just have to realize that when they're organizing it, look at how much travel is going to be in between the destinations, and that, you know, if you're on the move all the time, some people are going to be exhausted doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Joe talks about a trip they did back in the 1990s when they went to Scotland or whatever, and they were just on the move.
There's a book that he wrote.
Yeah. But they were on the move the whole time. And, you know, I think he always used to say, you know, he would have preferred that, you know, if they had an opportunity to kind of stay at a home base and kind of work from there and enjoy the experience of the village and the people and everything a little bit more.
Well, even when we did our Scotland trip, I think if we had, I think in the trip, I think there was a total of 3 hotels that we stayed at during that trip, if I remember correctly. We stayed at Carnoustie. We stayed at Marine.
In North Berwick.
North Berwick, and we stayed at the St. Andrews. Was it a Hilton?
Oh, we stayed at the Fairmont.
Fairmont.
Yeah, we stayed at the Fairmont.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologizes there. Fairmont. I think those were the 3 hotels that we stayed at, or 3 resorts that we stayed at during that trip. Now, that same trip, you take one of those 3 out, and then maybe that trip is a little bit different, a little bit toned down, but that would be the difference. If I were doing a road trip kind of set up to Scotland and doing a similar trip, I think that I would be looking at something more like that, or I'd be looking at staying at a place like in Gullen.
Well, that's actually, you know what? This is actually going to play into it quite well, because I was actually talking to Alan Minto.
Yes, exactly. I was just thinking of
buddy.
I couldn't remember the name of the golf course.
Yeah, Craigielaw.
They have the little chalets there that
right. They've got 20 plus rooms that are there in the golf course. And actually, you know what? In talking to him this week, and Graham Hesketh, who we played golf with at Glen Eagles.
Yes.
I was actually having a conversation back and forth with him, and they're working with Malcolm Duck from the Ducks, as far as an Aber lady or whatever, and we're going to get him on the podcast here.
Oh, great.
And there would be a great conversation to talk about the fact that a place like Gullen that has, you know, 20 plus golf courses in a small area, that you can use a home base and kind of go around. So we'll leave that to a future show, just making those arrangements now. But with them.
To your point there, with having a central home base, and even if you have pockets of them where you have 2 home bases over the course of your, you know, 10 or 11 day trip,
right?
And I would definitely look at that if I were giving advice on a road trip. If you're flying there, where you're going to be flying same day landing, then you could do like a 5-7 day easy, where you're in and out, you know, 1 day of travel on either end. If you're driving somewhere, you know, even if it's an in and out 1 day, like a drive the whole day, you might want to build in an extra day on either end of that, because the driving side of it is, I mean, it can be a little bit, even if you're just in the vehicle and you're not actually doing the driving, if you're on a bus or whatever, it can drain you pretty good, where you're not really going to enjoy jumping out of the vehicle and playing an early tee time
Well,
the
especially
next
if it's a
day.
couple hours a day that you've obviously got to travel. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
things like when you get to a place where you can unpack, it's not a great experience if all of a sudden you don't get to unpack. And as you said, you're living out of your suitcase.
Well, yeah, and your
Because
clothes
you got,
are wet, maybe from a
well,
little bit
that's
of a rainy day. I
that's
mean,
the
and
other
you
side
got
of
to
it.
throw it all in your
Yeah.
suitcase and drive to the next
Yes.
destination. I mean, God, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, and I've had those before where
well,
it's all of a sudden you know what, you don't have the time to dry your stuff out and you're throwing it back on. And again, this goes to the enjoyment factor. And if all
yeah,
these things start to eat into your enjoyment factor, and they're not things, I mean, everybody thinks of their golf trip as a utopia, right?
yeah.
If they haven't gone on the trip, they're like, oh, everything's going to go perfectly. But the thing is, you can mitigate a lot of things that could happen just by proper planning.
Well, exactly. I mean, take for instance, if we're in Ottawa in the National Capital Region.
Yeah.
Now, there's very little promotion done outside of Ottawa as Ottawa as a golf destination.
Right.
That said, if you're from outside of Ottawa and you're coming to Ottawa to play to do a road trip, well, you could pick a home base. You could pick a hotel downtown.
Sure.
You could pick a hotel out in the West End or a hotel in the East End, and easily use that as a home base for a week.
Yeah.
And fan out to 100
100
golf courses within less than 30 minutes drive of any hotel.
So a couple of things that people should keep in mind as far as your home base when you're setting up a home base. One, obviously consider driving distance to as a so you want to be the hub as far as the wheel is concerned, but also try and create your hub in a place that you don't have to drive from. So maybe it's a place like you said, maybe it's downtown. And then you've got an opportunity when you go back there, when you're done your golf, you've got the opportunity to walk to restaurants and whatever. Because again, all of a sudden going back to a hotel and then you've got to pick someone in the group to be the DD or whatever the case, or you're all got to jump on transportation to move. That lends to the inconvenience. But if you get done the golf, you're all tired. Nobody really wants to be the person to drive. Everybody wants to maybe have a beverage or two. You want to enjoy your dinner. Try to pick some place that, if they don't have the amenities within the hotel or the facility that they have, then, pick it close so that it's not out in the middle of the country someplace if they don't have those amenities, so that you can walk to a variety of restaurants or things like that. So you can enjoy it. And again, they're little details, but they're important details when you go on these trips.
Yeah. And if I were to leave anybody with one last piece of advice with respect to road trips or golf trips, put some attention into and some time into planning what you're going to pack. And be prepared for, remember, golf is an outdoor activity.
Yes.
Lots of stuff happen.
It's shocking how many people show up at a trip and they don't have a rain suit or an umbrella or rain gloves.
How in the world you can go on any golf trip and not be prepared for rain?
Especially you made a tee time.
Get your head a shake,
and your trip is planned. It's not like you're going to sit there and go, oh, we'll just play it tomorrow when it's nice weather out. No, guess what? You have that tee time for that day. Chances are there's not room in the window to change the time when you're going to play.
So be prepared. I mean, it's one thing to forget a toothbrush, or a hairbrush, or a tube of toothpaste, or deodorant, or even an extra few pairs of underwear. You can probably find a mall somewhere to buy some of that stuff that you needed. But as far as your golf goes, make sure you got enough golf balls that you don't have to, that you're not searching to buy dozens
more than one pair of shoes.
Yeah. I mean, I always brought extra golf shoes on some of our bigger trips.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Shorter ones, not so much. The weekend ones, not so much with extra shoes, but it also depended on whether it was driving or flying, how much extra clothing I took, because obviously there's a lot more restrictions on that kind of stuff now. But the one thing that was a mainstay is the layers, like having the layers for cold weather, the layers for wet weather, rain gear, umbrellas, extra golf gloves, lots of socks, because you guarantee your feet are going to get tired and you want to have nice socks. So, that would be the last thing that I would try to build in there, is make sure that you pack appropriately.
So, it's a deep subject. I'm sure we'll talk more about it. Like I said, Malcolm Duck or Alan will probably come on here at some point, and we'll talk about Scotland. I've reached out to them and had a chat with them. They also have a neat thing called the 1457 Society now, which is kind of a non golf course owning club that they have over in Scotland now. And, it's just neat to talk to those guys anyways. But yeah, they will certainly have some more advice in regards to road trips. And, if people have questions, just like anything else, people can reach out to us, social media or otherwise. Happy, and believe me, it's been done hundreds of times where I've had people reach out and say, hey, I'm going to X for the destination. Where do you recommend? What do you got for tips and stuff like that? Happy to provide those. So yeah,
we've been a lot of places. We haven't been everywhere, but we've certainly been a lot of places. So chances are, if you're going somewhere, if we haven't been there, we probably know where you should go. Yeah, and if we have been there, I guarantee we know where you should go.
Yeah, exactly. And in some cases, where to avoid.
Yes, there are many places where I would suggest you avoid.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but I digress.
You got it.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for now, and we'll hopefully we can get Alan on. It'd be nice to kind of relive some previous experiences with Alan.
Yeah, I don't know if Alan, I mean, that's part of that group. I think it might end up being Malcolm, and Malcolm owns an inn called the Ducks, and it's a famous place in Aberlady, just not down the road from Craigie Law. They're all part of that. Malcolm has sort of become the face of that a little bit for that area of Scotland. And, if people are not familiar with it, there's a famous thing that takes place. You know what? I won't spoil it. There's a famous thing that people get to do at the Ducks, as far as if they want to, that's golf related, that doesn't necessarily take place in the middle of the day. It might be in the evening as people are having some beverages and two, but we'll leave that for him. But yeah, we're going to have some other guests and stuff that are on. Obviously Sam McPhail is going to be on at some point from Golf PEI. We're going to have him on so he can ask his questions. Luke Lacey from New Brunswick is going to come on at some point. We've got some other people all lined up here for the show. So as people are planning out, we'll certainly have some showcases as far as travel, and you can save up your questions for those people for that.
Sounds good. All right, awesome show once again, Mr. McLeod.
All right,
some great topics. Hope we I hope we shared some really cool insight for everybody.
I hope so.
And I'm looking forward to the halfway shack discussion again at some point. And
I'll get you that egg roll recipe.
Yeah, please do, because I'm really getting hungry. All right. Listen, we haven't said it too much, but get over to flagstick.com and sign up for the Flagstick Digest newsletter. We post stuff regularly on flagstick.com, and we shove it out 3 times a week to our newsletter subscribers when it comes out. And it kind of gives you a little bit of, here's something new and interesting that you should jump over to. So we do encourage you to jump on.
And it's free.
Yeah, it is. And it's great content all the time. So I encourage you to jump on there, because you never know what other promo things we might slide out to the newsletter subscribers that other people don't get to see. So
you got
it. Check that out. All right. Thanks to all our sponsors. Once again, this week, Metcalfe Golf Club, Golf Sim Gurus, and a presenting sponsor, Golf PEI, Golf Prince Edward Island, premier Canadian golf destination boasting the most number of golf courses per capita in the country, has 400 fairways, closer than you can possibly imagine, top-tier accommodations, exquisite culinary experiences. It's the easiest golf vacation you will ever book. Book your golf vacation and tee times at golfpei.ca. I'm glad you're tuning in and hearing and watching what we're laying down for you. Be sure to follow us across all social media networks, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Twitter polls are kind of comical from time to time, so we'd like you to check those out. Sure. Subscribe to us, Spotify, Audible, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Do not forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like us, click the notification bell, make sure you never miss a single episode, and get yourself over to flagstick.com. As I mentioned before, sign up for the newsletter and check out the amazing golf content that we deliver every single day. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. I am Jeff Botter.
I'm Scott McLeod.
Always remember, go for the stick.